Hey folks, welcome back to the School of Arts and Entertainment radio program. This is Embrace the Bold, where you get to learn all about the amazing faculty, students, and projects and artists that make up the School of Arts and Entertainment here at Valencia College. Real quick notes before we get started. We've got some wonderful current events coming up. Up next, we have a staged reading of How I Learned to Drive by Paula Vogel. This is going to be read on East Campus. It's directed by Aradhana Tewari, and it will be read on September 22nd, 2023, and September 23rd, 2023. Both of those will be at 7:30 p.m. in the lobby of our Performing Arts Center. On Osceola campus, we have a gallery exhibit of the work of Mary Ann Carroll, the First Lady of the Highwaymen. That has been up, and there is a speaker presentation on Wednesday, September 20th at 9 a.m. in Building A on the Osceola campus. Following that, on this Thursday, September 21st, we have a show, Vanishing Florida, photographs by Kevin Boldnow. And Kevin Boldnow will be there to talk to us about his incredible photography. That's in the East Campus Anita Wooten Gallery. Following that, How I Learned to Drive. And following that, we have the fall reading series. This one's a musical, The Artist and the Scientist. That opens on Saturday, October 21st, plays at 7:30 p.m., and it will also play the following day, Sunday, October 22nd. That will be a matinee at 2 o'clock p.m. This one will be in the East Campus, but it will be in the Building 3 atrium. And those are some of the major events that we have coming up. Today, we have the cast of How I Learned to Drive by Paula Vogel. And I'm really excited to have them here. They are going to tell us a little bit about the show. They're going to talk about their process. They're going to talk about their own backgrounds as actors and performers, and just the experience of this show and why it's important. So before we get to that, I'd like them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask them to say their name and the role that they are playing in the show. Okay, you ready? Let's start with Bree.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I am the Greek chorus, the female Greek chorus, which is Mom and Aunt Mary.
Hi, I am Amethyst. I am technically playing the narrator, who also reads the stage directions.
My name is Meredith, and I'm the assistant director under Aradhana.
Hi, my name is Jess. My pronouns are they, them, and I am Lil Bit.
Hi there, I'm Josh Weidenhammer, and I'm playing Uncle Peck.
Hello, my name is Adrian Ganas-Asmita, and I am the male Greek chorus.
All right. Well, really, welcome. I'm so glad you guys made it to talk to me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This is exciting. So first, tell me, what is this play about?
So the play is about a young girl who is struggling with familial abuse at the hands of her uncle, and just kind of how that affects her and how her life kind of goes on from that, and just the way that it shapes her character, and really just the ramifications of what abuse and sexual abuse honestly can do to a person and how it affects them.
And what are the ramifications that we start to see in Little Bit?
Well, then I think you should answer that.
Oh, gosh.
You got this.
That's kind of a tricky question. I think that there's a lot of ups and downs for her, but most importantly, at least in my opinion, is more so where the play leaves us, which is kind of this moment of Lil Bit being able to, despite her trauma, find agency and regain control over the direction of her life, especially since throughout the play we see moments where she's not quite sure where she's going to end up and who she'll turn out to be, but by the end she's very decided in the direction she does want to go, which is one of breaking generational trauma, pretty much. So I think it's a really powerful message, and yeah, I guess that's what I have to say.
Yeah, it's also really complicated because she has this complicated relationship. It's her uncle, and it's not just a malevolent relationship. It's one in which she, there's fruitful things that come from it besides the child abuse, which is why I think he's able to really linger and get in there with her.
So it sounds like this isn't just about like the abuse and the ramifications. It's as much about how the main character, how the entire thing is complicated,
Very much.
and
so.
how the main character is conflicted and finding herself.
Right, because I think she loves her uncle and he does a lot for her, and then, but she also in behind her head she knows that what he's doing is wrong, and it's it's hurting her, but I think she's still in her heart cares and loves him like as she should, but then it's hard for her to kind of differentiate this terrible person with this uncle that has done so much for her.
And that sounds complicated.
Yeah, very complicated.
Right. Which I think these situations often are, right?
Right.
That's why it's a hard subject to talk about.
Yeah.
So what is your process?
So I guess our process was we started with a Zoom meeting. So we really actually never met in person. We kind of just read through the play online on Zoom. And then our next rehearsal was just going straight forward and started blocking and started figuring out how our characters are playing and connecting with one another.
Okay, so did you get to read the script before your first rehearsal?
Yes. Yeah, we read it beforehand. Like, we could just look it up and everything. And then we got our scripts a day before. The morning of our first rehearsal.
Okay, so was it different to read the script in your room by yourself than it was to hear it voiced out loud?
Absolutely. I think when you're reading it, it's easier to kind of skim past the more difficult parts. But then when you actually hear, these very talented actors act it out loud, it kind of puts you right in the middle of it, and you can't really escape the harder parts.
Ooh, that's really great. You can't really escape the harder parts. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I believe it's always a good idea for any actor or performer to understand what they're auditioning for. And, something that I personally like to do, I always like to read the shows just so I can know what I'm kind of dipping my head into. The show, when I was reading it in my room on my MacBook, it's at first I didn't really understand it. I didn't really want to really know what it was about. I just wanted to just read it, and then led to the process of me, what should I audition with? What material should I bring? What emotion should I show to the director to be considered for the role? And I just thought that reading it by yourself is so different, obviously, compared to when you're in a room with people with creative minds and that want to be collaborative and, bring this to life. So it's always a good idea to read it by yourself, to take it in and ingest it, but then also express what you have been building up over time with others.
All right. So you found that it was very different to read it by yourself than it was with others, and you're enjoying the collaborative process.
Yes, because I believe it's very evident that great art comes from great collaboration, and together we are stronger.
So what does collaboration look like in this kind of a thing?
I would say collaboration would be definitely little bits interaction with Uncle Peck, because that definitely it's very impactful versus just reading and you're thinking, oh, it's like a relationship with their uncle and their niece, but in fact it's a whole different relationship that you would think when you're really digesting this entire play.
And do you want to go read?
Go ahead, you already said
Okay,
it.
I was gonna say, and then when you're when you're collaborating with the rest of them, I think it kind of makes reading through it easier because we're all kind of sitting in the room, we're all feeling a bit nervous about what we're reading and kind of for lack of a better term, grossed out in some parts, and then you kind of look around and everybody else is feeling the same way, and it kind of almost makes it easier to cope with the fact that there are stories like this in the real world that are, that happen the same way. And, I think all 7 of us kind of, were able to process just how deep this, or like how hard this play is, like, together. It was, easier in a group setting, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I take the collaboration, like, since we already talked about in the show, the collaboration for us as actors, it was very different to have to read something so serious and something that's not comedic relief, funny, or even singing, because that's kind of what I've been used to for a very long time. Doing this was harder. I won't even lie to you. There was a moment I was like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to be a part of this? Just because the content hit such a, like, deep part of a lot of people's lives. But then seeing everyone for the first time was like, okay, Uncle Peck is not a horrible person because the actual actor is a good person. And, like, Lil Bit is a good person.
Right.
The narrator is very good. It's like seeing actual people behind the character was really important to see, and being able to talk to everybody, seeing their outputs on everything just kind of brought it together to, okay, I do want to bring this out there because this is an important message to people.
So you say it's important. So why? What do you mean?
I say it's important because not only is there the, like, trigger warnings of abuse, sexual situations, and things like that, there's also the importance of understanding that in the story they talk about the mom. Mom does, like, she wants to be honest with her child and tell her child, hey, this is what being a female in our generation is like. And being able to say that to your child is so important, because I feel like a lot of parents get, like, very icked out about talking about, like, sex and things with other men and females, just things like that. I feel like a lot of parents get very scared and nervous to talk to their kids about it. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's so important for kids to understand what sex is, even if it's not them going out and doing it, but understanding you need to be careful with who you give this to. You need to be careful how they do it. You have to understand you saying no is a very firm line. Do not give up that line. But I feel like since Mom was a bit laid back with trying to inform that to her child already went out and learned these things from someone who, in actuality, she should have never learned it from, instead of learning it from her own mother.
All right. So, so this is important because it really gives that message of, like, this is how you need to talk about this, like that sex is important to talk about.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, sex is an important thing for a lot of females to know, even males too, because males need to understand females have their boundaries, like females need to understand they have their boundaries. I know that's not like a firm thing nowadays, because now there's a lot of things, we have more things we know about and more ways that people describe themselves. But in this time, it was such a firm line of gender. Gender was such a firm thing. There was only 1 and 2, and that's it. There's no in between, and that was just such an important thing back then. And I feel like that kind of correlates now, because there is a lot of people who go through this unfortunate situation, but it's also because they lack the knowledge of what it is.
Okay. Now, is that gender line something that is very important within the script?
Actually, very much so, because within the play, Little Bit's mother was mother and grandmother were very against her having knowledge of sex, even though, like, Little Bit with her mother, she would always say, if you had some incident with the boy, it would be her own fault. It wouldn't be the Uncle Peck's fault or another male's fault. It would be the female's fault always. So it kind of puts this state of mind where in that society back then, it was always the female's fault, never the male's, whether there was some miscommunication or whatever. And at that time, when reading this from back then, and since time has changed, it definitely puts a different perspective.
All right. So can you guys go through and kind of describe who your character is and what role you play in this story?
Okay, I guess I'll start first. So I play the male Greek chorus, and a lot of choruses may not be as common as it was back in the origins of theater, back in the days of Thespis and all that, but choruses were conducted of a single actor is playing very many different characters. So as a male Greek chorus, I'm playing this old Southern grandfather, and I'm playing a waiter, or I'm playing a middle school boy. So in order for that, all those characters, even if they be maybe smaller roles, they all have impacted the characters in a way that is helps the story move forward and impacts the story overall. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, I just play a bunch of different characters that have a bunch of different men that have maybe impacted Lil Bit's life.
Okay, so what is the journey of these characters?
I would say that was something that I really had to like kind of understand when I was reading the script. In my opinion, like the journey is just that, like, I mean, every character, no matter how big or small, has a journey. So I really have to go kind of beyond the text and try to understand like what's this character's goal, what's their arc in a sense, and what was their motivation.
Okay, and do you connect with the characters that you get to play?
I try to connect. I try to do that with every character that I'm playing, no matter how difficult it may be. I may not be 60 plus years old and Southern, but in some way I do connect with some of the morals, or I find maybe in the way they talk or the way they speak or what's something they like, in order to make the portrayal of somebody very authentic, because, it is a privilege to portray a character. And so I feel like we have to do that right by trying to find what do we ultimately connect with.
That's great. And so what roles do these characters that you play, what roles do they play in Lil Bit's life?
So like the grandfather was Lil Bit's grandfather, and there was some ways that he viewed Lil Bit and gender roles and sexuality is, honestly very taboo topics. The way that he kind of talked about it definitely have impacted Lil Bit in the way that she could honestly talk in her family, because that definitely affected the dynamic. I play like a middle schooler who harasses Lil Bit, unfortunately, and that definitely has impacted the way that she will behave. And because those incidents, no matter how small or how short they are, I mean, you never know, those incidents can stay with you, and it can be scarring. So overall, I just find I guess the roles that they all play are just very important.
And then like the waiter, kind of was that first character, male character, in fact, that a little bit didn't even know him, and he was showing concern over the situation that she was in, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I believe that kind of showcases the way of kind of how men will view her. You have a grandfather who kind of views Lil Bit as just an object in a sense, or you have a very caring man who is willing to look out for her, even though the person that she's with is ultimately going to hurt her.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Josh.
Uncle Peck.
Yeah, I play Uncle Peck, who is in mid-40s, kind of a veteran. He's married, childless. He's the in-law uncle to Lil Bit. He obviously has some trauma and has been he's kind of a hypersexualized man. He's got trauma with sexuality and perhaps some other things related to the war. He's an alcoholic, and he has this very unhealthy, but he finds redemptive, healing obsession with Lil Bit. This play is a lot of about memories for Lil Bit. The Greek chorus serves as her trauma and her memories. And I think Uncle Peck, unfortunately, plays at the hierarchy of all those traumas.
So he's clearly he's the instigator of the trauma.
Yeah, he's if you in the play, he's always lurking in the rearview mirror in the car, and so it's like that trauma we might all carry with us, even if we're not aware of how clear the rearview mirror might be.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. Jess.
Hi, yeah. I play Lil Bit. I would say the trickiest part about this role really is, as Josh mentioned, it is a collection of memories. So it's kind of hard to define where Lil Bit is at overall in the show, because it goes from when she's 11 to when she's 35. So there's a lot of different moments in life that all play out across the play, and with the exception of one of them, it actually regresses in age as you go further. So you can see her getting younger and younger and younger until the show ends when she is an 11-year-old. And so yeah, it's definitely tricky to kind of just wrap her up and define her in like a single sentence, I guess.
Well, and how are you finding to relate to her?
So I have kind of thought about this a lot, and usually my process as an actor definitely involves finding traits that I relate to in a character so that I can build a connection with them. This one, I kind of found myself instead putting up some healthy boundaries, just because of the content of the play itself. I didn't want too much of her to get into my head, because even though this is like a short staged reading, you know, the longer you sit with it, the more time you spend with the character, it can still be, you know, it has its lasting effects. I'm not going to say damaging per se, but it definitely can have its effects. But I think personality-wise, Lil Bit and I get along. She's very defiant. She's got a good sense of humor. And so I think in that ways, we kind of stand on the same footing. But other than that, I do try to keep a healthy, safe distance from her.
And what does that mean? Like as an actor, to keep your healthy, safe distance.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things where there is a very fine line between finding empathy and sympathy for your character and their experiences and trying to force yourself to live them, if that makes any sense. Especially if you look at like method acting and stuff. I'm very against method acting, just because I find it to be not a safe practice. If you put yourself into a position where you're stuck inside a character and their mind, and you start to really live and think like them and take on their trauma and their experiences, it can damage your own psyche. So I think in this case, it really was just about finding that balance between being able to empathize with her and portray the experience without living it for myself, if that makes sense.
It totally does.
Cool.
Thank you. And we're gonna skip to Bree, and then we'll come back.
Sick. My character is female Greek chorus, and I play the mother and Aunt Mary. I agree full-heartedly with what Jess said about having that safe distance away from these characters, just because when I read it alone, in my head, I'm like, okay, mother's really trying hard to maybe help her child, and Aunt Mary's kind of just trying to defend her husband and keep him out of trouble. But then when we came into rehearsal and actually started acting these things out and kind of reacting towards each other, I had a moment where I really had to step away from mother because she, in my opinion, didn't try hard enough to protect her child, and she knew it. I feel like she fully knew that the way her mother was talking to Little Bit and knowing how she felt when her mother would talk to her like that when she was the same age was just damaging to her. And I didn't really appreciate the way that she really wanted to be honest with her kid. She really wanted to have this honesty and have her kid come to her for everything. But yet the second her mother or her father would say something, she just kind of like back down and just let them talk to her the way they wanted to talk to her. And for me, I have a different outview of that. I have a different look for it. So it was a little hard to find that connection with the mother. But I did find a little bit of a connection with Aunt Mary just because she full-heartedly believed that Uncle Peck, her husband, is a good man, is a good person. But she does know what he's been doing. But she blames it on Little Bit. She blames it 100% on Little Bit when in reality it's her husband's fault. So that was something where it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to agree with you. But as it went on, I started noticing she was never the favorite of the family. The family never really liked her that much. It was always the mom who was the favorite. So it kind of made me have a different outlook on her. Like, she puts everything into her husband because nobody else put everything into her.
So there are family dynamics and reasons that allow Aunt Margaret to justify her actions.
Aunt Mary, yeah.
Aunt Mary.
You're good. It in a way, it did. I feel like, yes, she should have really stuck it to her husband and be like, hey, you're a disgusting person for what you did. But then again, you sit there with her for a little bit, maybe a little too long, and start to think, okay, yes, she is not really understanding full-heartedly the extent of the situation that's going on between those two. But then again, she's never been the favorite. She's never been having that much attention. Even in a moment, she talks about how she's always sharing her husband. Everybody else wants her husband, but she never gets that time from him. So she's really just sitting alone, waiting till the day she gets that attention that everybody else is getting from her husband or even from her family.
All right. So is there even just like a jealousy and stuff like that?
I think there's a huge jealousy of Little Bit and Aunt Mary. I think she's very jealous of all even if it's negative attention, it's still some form of attention because Grandpa is always on her, Grandma is always on her, Mom is always on her, Uncle Peck is always on her. So it's like all these people put so much attention into Little Bit, but Aunt Mary never got that attention. So she has this jealousy and almost this little bit of like rage against Little Bit. For what reason though? So when you sit there and you're like, oh my God, she never had that attention. She never had anyone on her side.
Ooh, it sounds like you've really been able to find some empathy and some interesting depth.
100%. It's because I have to, since I'm playing two drastically different characters, I had to figure out how to make them different. So I really try to dive into who Mom is compared to who Aunt Mary is, and that would really help me build the difference between those two.
That's awesome. All right, Amethyst.
Okay, so I am the narrator who reads the stage directions. So this is kind of different than, if you would see this on a live show, because the actors or the set will be giving you the description or the view. But since this is a stage reading, I'm kind of giving the audience the bridge between the story and themselves seeing it. So with me, I had to really really be sturdy with my words and be very clear, because one wrong word could disrupt the entire story. Because without the plot, I basically tell the plot and basically telling how this is happening, especially when the characters, they're just reading the play. They're not giving specific blocking when there's a certain scene. I change the scene. I tell how Little Bit is interacting with Peck, or how a little bit interacting with different characters. So I'm basically the bridge between all the characters and also the bridge between the setting and the plot and all of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, would your role exist in a fully staged production?
It will. I think it will not really, because actually, if it wouldn't, because then the people will be viewing instead of hearing it, so they'd be seeing, for instance, music playing. They will be seeing Uncle Peck actually. The movement of whatever Peck is doing to a Little Bit. But with me, I'm actually telling it, so they're just reading it off from the script.
Got it. Okay. Well, and it sounds like in a staged reading, this is a really important role.
Very much so. Very much. Because with this, I really had to deep dive, and especially with me, I'm a very fast talker. So I really had to make sure that my words were very clear, very steady. So then I was able to make sure that the audience understood what was happening within that scene, or even just the stage direction of where the characters are moving towards.
That's great. Yeah. All right. And assistant director, what is your role in all of this? What are you doing?
So since it's like a smaller, it's just a staged reading, a lot of the time, honestly, I've just been what I like to call the human dictionary. So, Paula Vogel loves her big words. And so a lot of the time there were words that even I didn't know how to say. And, I was, sitting in the back of the rehearsal space or, the pack, and just kind of Googling words and the pronunciations, and, even after we leave here, I'm going to work with a couple of the actors on, some things that we're not quite familiar with. Like, if you're 20 years old and you haven't really delved into, partying, you probably don't know very well how to act intoxicated. And so, we're going to work on stuff like that and just kind of, helping them just get more into the characters. This is actually my first real experience with doing directing stuff since I was in high school. Thanks. I took kind of a break from college for a bit to kind of figure things out, and Aradana was lovely enough to bring me on as kind of a half assistant director, half stage manager, if you will, and so I think I work most closely with Amethyst because, we've had to kind of edit and cut some of the stage directions, like if it brings up a costume change or something like that, something that wouldn't even happen in the actual stage production. We've it's kind of just a lot of editing. And it's mostly just kind of like half assisting, half stage management. And, I send out the performance notes for Donna and the rehearsal notes and stuff like that. And just, anytime I'm asked to help out, during rehearsals, I'm up and ready to go.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. For my first experience doing it, I think Aradana has been a really great director to work with. She's very talented and just I respected her so much as a professor. I took her class twice, in fact, and so to actually work side by side with her on a professional level, I think has been probably one of the best show experiences I've had so far.
Awesome, that's great. So what is it like to work with the Professor Tawari, with Aradana? What are you like? What is that process? How does she run a rehearsal? What's going on?
I think Jessica should say that because you actually. I'm so sorry. Woo. I think what I meant to say is that you should answer this because you actually work more with Aradana than we do. I'm so sorry for pronouncing your name.
Wow.
Okay. That's okay.
I'm just hiding in a corner right now.
Where's Goofin?
I wouldn't say that I've worked more with her than anybody else, but same as our lovely assistant director mentioned, I did take classes with her and everything, and she reached out to me and asked me to do this show with her. But kind of how rehearsals have been going, what I like most about working with Aradana is how open she is to discussion when it comes to topics in the play, or when someone has an idea about something, or when there's questions, we all sit down and we get a chance to talk it out. And then even one-on-one, if you want to talk to her, she's more than ready to sit down with you and talk stuff out. So it's been very collaborative in that way, and I really appreciate that, just because I love talking. So and it helps me too when I'm going through my own process to be able to say how is this being perceived? If I don't know what I'm doing is being perceived correctly, then it feels weird to keep doing it. So it's nice to kind of just sit down, talk about everybody's ideas, see how they actually look and how they translate. And so I just like the fact that she's really willing to do that, which is nice. Instead of just being go stand there and do this, she's like, okay, well, how are you feeling? What do you think? And so it's very helpful, is what I would say.
I 100% agree with that. It's cool. It's cool because we're such a small cast, and it's really just the reading, so you wouldn't really be able to do everything we've done with a huge, full-blown production with 30 people, because you wouldn't really get the chance to give your ideas just because there's a time constraint and you need to get things done. People need to understand things. But with this, I feel like we got such a greater understanding of the script, not even just by performing it, but by reading it, being able to talk about it. And the fact that she has really opened a lot of ways for us to put our own artistic values into this show is really cool, because it's not just her like you said, it's not just her saying, oh, go do that, do this. I want you to do this way because this is me, what I want you to do. It's more of, I want you to get there, but how would you get there? Like, show me how you would get there. And if it fit, then that's what's in there. Like, a lot of it is a lot of people's like thought of, I think I should go over here because of blah, 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 blah. And I do it this way. And she lets it in. Sometimes it doesn't work because of the next thing. And she has ideas already because she is the director. But she doesn't, she doesn't add, it's not just she's the director. She's like, okay, y'all are actors. Y'all have great ideas. Let me hear them. Let me see if this fits in here and we'll put it in. And it's cool because I've been in big productions. I've been in small productions. I think this is the smallest I've been in. And it's cool because I get to really see other people's ideologies and other people's thoughts of how to do things. And I'm like, ooh, I'm going to steal that. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I stole half of your stuff, but
that is for sure for our class.
It's fine.
When we were working with Arizona, because me and Bree were kind of both in script analysis, so we're taking her class. And when we were discussing, we're actually reading the same play, and so when we were discussing it, we kind of took some of your ideas, but she did not let us talk. She was like, Bree, Amethyst, you cannot answer anything. And me and Bree, we're kind of, we're mouthing, say this, say that. And there was a point where she was like, stop it. Yeah. She's like, you cannot disrupt the class. We're like having a little joke around.
I'm a fan. I've never have met her before the show, so I've worked with a good amount of directors, but what I really enjoy about her is that I feel like there's no ego attached. Some directors are very my way or the highway, which, I mean, every director is different and, everybody's process is different. But I believe with Arizona, she's very open to what you have to say, especially with a show like this. It deals with very sensitive topics. So I feel like when it's very more collaborative, it's more welcoming. And it's a place where even when you're going to be vulnerable in front of people, you will feel safe because you have a director that will look after you. And I'm really a fan of how her directing style is. I believe that the way that she's doing it is getting good results out of us, and it's our responsibility as actors too to pay it back and put in the work outside of rehearsals and learn how to say these words and dedicate ourselves to what the character is and what the character stands for. And so, if we're gonna have a great director, it helps us as actors to give our 100% as well too.
I think as well with the blocking too is without her, we wouldn't really be telling a story. It would just be us reading the script, but with her blocking the movement, we're actually being able to portray the story and see how the characters are moving around. It's really, really good. So props to her.
That's great. So what will we see? So, because this is a staged reading, and it's not fully staged, but what does that mean? What are we going to see when we come to see you?
We're not going to see a lot of music. We're not going to see lights and stuff. It's really going to be the raw version of the show. You're going to see some blocking. You'll see us sitting, standing, moving to different positions, which means something at the end of the day when this reading forces you to really listen to what we're saying. Instead of it being all flashy and lots of show and tell, instead of it just being words, it's more of you have to fully listen and digest what we're saying. And some of the blocking does help you understand specifically how this character feels about what they just said or what they just was told. So that movement and stuff does really help with that. But it really forces you to listen and digest the story instead of getting distracted by flashy lights, colors, dance numbers. It's the raw words of Paula Vogel and what she's really trying to get across.
All right. And so you said a little bit about blocking. Now, I know I've seen some stage readings where it's just actors sitting in chairs with music stands. Is that, and wearing all black, is that what we should expect?
No, the play's really unique, though, too, in a sense that there's all these memories in different times and stuff. So it's important. And also has this element of instructional video on how to drive. And so, I think that when you come see the reading, you're going to understand the words and the themes that she's getting across, but I think you're also going to understand how the play would look and what the action would be like if you were to see it, because it's got some strange elements to it with the memory and the Greek chorus.
Yeah, and then, the actors, Arizona wanted them to kind of go through their own wardrobe and and find something that they felt would fit their characters to wear as a costume. Because, usually you have a costume department. But since it's smaller, they're kind of responsible for finding, like Josh is wearing his Uncle Pet clothes.
But I will say this wasn't in my wardrobe. It was in the garage in the secondhand clothing bag. So
He said,
it's
don't
a father-in-law
wear this.
gift from like 10 years ago, and this has finally gotten worn as the child molester. So.
No, noted. Yeah, so it's up to them to kind of have their costumes. And you'll see it's kind of like, I don't want to say the word charades. That doesn't feel right, but kind of like, pantomiming, if you will, the motions. So the actors actually don't touch each other at all. And they just make movements that would, portray what they would actually do if it was a fully staged show. So, like at one point, I think Little Bit puts her head on Uncle Peck's shoulder, like in the script, but in our version, she's just gonna kind of like tilt her head, and Uncle Peck is gonna be about 3 feet away from her, and he's gonna it's like gonna be just kind of pantomiming the idea of what would be happening.
That seems really interesting. What is that like? What does that feel like to perform? Does it feel as fulfilling? Does it feel interesting?
Well, I think the idea of the show being so around like, harassment and, uncomfortableness and all that, I think it's very powerful in the sense that they're not touching, because that element of the very uncomfortableness of the so-said touching, with it not being present in the show, it can still be delivered in a way. And if it's like, it's almost like another element's not being taken away, but another element gets added to it. And so the message can still be delivered just as powerful without the very unfortunate things kind of happening in front of you.
Yeah, if I may too, because I do, my character initiates a lot of the heavy petting that's, mentioned in the play. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that, I love very provocative theater like this, in the sense that I've just read some of the passages and I get chills. It's so kind of gross and dark. And there are times when, again, he undoes her blouse, or she lays his head on him, but we don't actually mime those things. And there's something really spiritually creepy about it that we don't touch, for me. Because I feel like I've touched people before. I've cuddled before. You know what I mean? But I've never pretended to molest somebody by not touching them. So I don't know if that makes any sense. There's just something icky about it still, even though we don't touch.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Have you guys, just simply because I also am a theater director, and this is within my world. Have you talked about like de-rolling? Is that something? Because it sounds like, so here's some of what I'm hearing. So here's some of what I'm hearing is that you guys are all going through this really interesting process of trying to identify with these characters, mm-hmm. and trying to keep distance and yet invest. This battle between having empathy with these people and also not judging them, and yet trying to have empathy, and trying to see things from their perspective, their paradigm. And I'm also hearing you talk about like how do you keep yourselves healthy, mm-hmm. while you go through this process. And so one of the things that I have helped people do, and I have seen happen, is this process of de-rolling, where how do you take care of yourself after you do the show? Like, how do you, I have finished this rehearsal and now I am done. Like, is there any process that's happening within this?
I think for me personally, I definitely can tell that when it comes to this storyline, even though I wouldn't say I'm a specific character, but I am, deep diving into the script and deep diving with each word. So a way that I kind of disassociate after I leave rehearsal is I kind of hang out with my castmate over here. We just kind of hang out and, go back into the real world and just, have our little laugh rather than just be like dark and gloomy and all this trauma and all that. So leaving rehearsal with a couple of laughs kind of helps us to then come back to the next rehearsal with full-minded energy to deep dive into this heaviness, but then also leave back with some goodness as well.
Nice. So you make sure that you have a positive conversation after rehearsal.
For sure.
Nice.
Well, it's interesting what you say about de-rolling, because I think I've embarked on de-rolling in other shows where we're done. It's the final encore. It's time to de-roll. But as most of you might be like myself, you discover something in rehearsal, and unfortunately now you can't sleep at night because you're thinking about it. Unfortunately, my role what am I thinking about? It's not too pleasant. So I'd like to learn a little bit more on that process and how I might be able to de-roll and disengage when at the same time I'm discovering, and there's a part of me that's excited about that, even though it's, not so fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's just me as an actor. I'm a little more, I'm a little more emotionally vulnerable there and willing to take that dive. But I don't, this is a play I've never wanted to do or read. In fact, I read it when I was, I don't know, y'all's age. I'm 43 years old. So when I read it, I was, 21, didn't have children, never been married, never had 20 years of taking care of people, and seeing those people actually be victimized and having to be their best interest. Now I read it as a father of 2 daughters, and it's a nightmare. Yeah. It's gross. And I hate this guy, and my challenge is, if we watch any film or theater piece and we hate the person, that might be a good thing, but we at least want to watch them. Mm-hmm. We don't want them to leave the stage every time they enter, and I'm on half the pages. So, anyways, I just wanted to share that. It's not so easy to de-roll from Uncle Peck when you're actually a 42-year-old man surrounded by, 20-year-old, 19-year-old people. So there you go.
That's crazy. Like, the de-rolling thing is interesting because, like what Amethyst says, we do kind of hang out after, and that takes me out of the mindset of trauma. And I'm like, okay, I'm good now. I just take a little page out of your book when we did our little, we made a show called Rubik's Cube at the gala. I use that very, very heavily in the show just because I don't like to bring that negative or like that really harsh energy to my living space just because I don't want to live with that. I don't want to really keep that with me. So I tend to, because I know in the show I do have to be very vulnerable, and that can be very scary. It's scary to be vulnerable around people I don't know, people who could just like be like, oh, I'm just gonna attack you later or something like that, like, which won't happen, but it's possible. And it's just, being vulnerable is such a scary thing, but it's such an important thing for an actor because you have to be 100% open to the ideas of these characters, because you can't just hate them because you are playing them. You have to do them justice no matter how bad you hate what they've done, what they think, because you as an actor are responsible for portraying this character in a way the director wanted to get that message across. And for me, it was a little hard in the beginning because I'm like, I need to get away from this character because I don't like the thoughts that are coming to my own self and the things I'm harboring. So I would really just, once I left Amethyst finally, and I would just sit in my car for a little bit, I'd turn on the AC, and I would just think back to what makes me me and what makes me compared to what makes this character. Because I'm not Aunt Mary. I'm not Lucy. I'm Brie. I'm my own person. I don't think this way. So I start to think of, okay, I'm me. I say my name out loud. I say my first and last name. And I'm like, this is me. I'm not them. And then when I finally feel like I'm back in my own body, then I would go inside and be like, okay, I'm living my life. I'm not living this character's life.
So you've really created a ritual.
Yeah, I did. It's my favorite thing in the world.
That is awesome. Nice. So great. So we've talked about a lot. We've talked about what the show's going to look like. It sounds like you are wearing costume-esque, but you are not officially costumed. It sounds like you will be reading scripts, but there are not necessarily music stands. Correct. And so when we arrive to watch you in the performing arts lobby, it is somewhat staged in that you will stand and present and perhaps move your bodies into spaces, but it's not necessarily going to be staged as physically interactive as a fully lit, costumed, set designed performance would be.
Correct.
So there's a little bit of movement, not a whole lot. I know that the audience is small, so it's going to be very intimate,
Very much so.
which is exciting and scary, right?
Terrifying.
I'm kind of excited to see their reactions because because when we're reading this, we have our own facial reactions and just hearing this. So I'm gonna try not to crack up and see them and like gross out and be like, oh, I have to leave now.
I do feel like a lot of people might. I feel like before coming to see the show, just be aware for your own mental health of what content is in the show, just because it's a 2-hour reading and a lot of it can be very harmful to other people's mental health. So just being aware, we won't take it personal, I promise. If you can't handle the contents in the show, please just take your own mental health into consideration and decide if it's a good idea for you to attend.
I like that, but I also what is the value of staying beyond intermission? Because it sounds like this is hard, but I'm also hearing you guys say that this is really important. So what is the value?
It's just real, like you got to go through this journey. It's the state of our humanity. It's just a snapshot of this fictional family, but we all have a piece of this. I don't know if when Vogel wrote this, all this kind of psychological jargon was as prevalent as it is, but our trauma and it's very much something we're all dealing with in terms of trauma. And I don't know, I find it very provocative and interesting and life-affirming. It's not pornographic or malevolent, despite its really uncomfortable there's some uncomfortable situations in the play.
Also, I think that it's also telling history. This was set like in the 1950s through all the way to the 70s, and this is still going on today, where girls or any gender is still getting molested by their relatives or other people. So just telling this story understands the history and understand that this is still going on. So having that awareness.
It's not like this happened in the 50s and like,
it stopped.
Hey, y'all, we're safe.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and then the show is going to be uncomfortable, but that's kind of the purpose of it. This topic shouldn't be treated lightly. This is not some fun story, and it's not supposed to be. So the people that are going to watch this, they might be affected by it, and I think that's okay, because how else are we going to spread word about the stuff that the stuff that we think this in the story it's unfortunately if it's aged or something like that, it's still happening. It's very prevalent. The amount of people that still get affected by sexual abuse is disgusting. Yeah. So I have no problem of the show being uncomfortable, because you know what? That's okay. Because you know what? Somebody's going to watch that. They're going to maybe reach out. They're going to see if they're impacted too. And, this show is going to have a positive impact. So if they're uncomfortable, okay, but there's a deeper meaning to it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. And I think there is value in being uncomfortable sometimes, because if we just go through, looking at art and shows and everything that fit our ideal view of the world, then you kind of go into this headspace of ignoring real problems, real, painful problems that are happening to, it could be happening to your friends. It could be happening to, like your classmates, your professors, anything like. And so I think it kind of for a lot of people could be eye-opening, that, art isn't supposed to always make you feel like happy and there are rainbows and unicorns. There are still, gender roles and biases that come with being a woman, and like Bree talked about that, Little Bit gets blamed by Aunt Mary for being groomed, basically. And so I think that, it's a good, important, piece of art to have, to kind of, make people realize that, you have to, it happens to everybody, or not everybody, but you know what I mean? Like, it happens to a lot of people that you probably wouldn't even expect it. And I think art is really beautiful and interesting in that way, where it can make you feel inspired, but it can also make you feel uncomfortable, and then inspiration may come from that discomfort.
Well, and if I can just kind of add on to everything, the most important message of the show for me is, like, other than awareness and advocating for education and stuff like that, I think it also says something really important about, for people who have had these kinds of experiences, it ends the play in this idea of, you are more than just a collection or combination of all of your trauma. Like, there is life and hope beyond that. And even though it's something that's very difficult to experience, very difficult to work through, it's not the end of things. Like, there's still a way for you to, find ways to get help and push through it and regain control of your life. And I just think that that's probably the most important message of the show. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say.
I like that. I like that idea. You are more than just a collection of your trauma. And perhaps that is part of the message of this.
Yeah.
And perhaps that is why we stay past intermission.
Absolutely.
This is great, y'all. So we only have a couple minutes left. And I have a couple questions that are just going to be really rapid fire. So first question is, in one sentence or less, what have you learned from this play, this process, this experience? What is one thing that you are going to take away from this?
I'm definitely going to take away that for trauma, even though it's still part of you, you kind of have to learn how to embrace and just keep moving forward.
Thank you.
If we were going to do it in one word, my word would kind of be...
Oh, it was one word.
It would be kind of, I guess... Oh. It's like... I was thinking kind of like reminiscent, I guess, in like memory and how that affects our emotions, because the memories that, happened to her will stay with her forever. And in the show, we definitely see that. And I think that's one thing that stuck to me because, in our lives with everyone, the memories that we have affect how we act in everyday life. It's going to affect us till the day we die. And I think that the show is a great example of that, and how we shouldn't take lightly what we have done in our life, and everything in life happens for a reason, in a sense.
Uncle Peck has a fire in his heart that he can't get rid of. All people should be careful of those fires and where they come from, and put them out earlier than later.
That's a rich imagery. Yeah.
If you are in a position of teaching or a position of support, or like someone who is seen as supportive to someone, or like a higher thing to someone, don't take advantage of that. Understand that it's a privilege for someone to trust you so deeply to just go to you for things. And if they do, inform them the best way you can without harming them.
I think my takeaway from this whole experience is less for the play and more, as a director, because that's what I want to do, from my career, is just the way that Aradana has taken, this really heavy play, and she gave us that space to kind of express how we were feeling about it. And I think that I would, take that and use it for my future actors to make sure that they feel like they have a safe space to talk about their, not only what's going on in any play that we're reading, but like if they needed a safe space, to come to their director, me, and just kind of talk it out, like that they would have that with me. And I think that Aradana, did a really great job at giving us that space about, because she brought up like what makes you uncomfortable in the play, like this is really heavy. And so I think that for me, like I would definitely, use that.
Cool. Mine's kind of similar because it's less about the play, more about just like me as an actor, but something that I definitely took away from this. I've read material like this before, but never interacted with it. And so it just really highlighted for me that, you talk a lot about taking care of your physical body and self as an actor, but it goes a million steps deeper than that. So just taking care of yourself and making sure that you're making yourself your first priority.
That's great. It sounds like this has been a really rich process.
Yes.
Even though it's been really hard material, and perhaps some of the difficulty of the material is one of the things that's been making it rich.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So guys, I hope that you come out to see this reading. It is going to be at the East Campus Performing Arts Center lobby, and it's going to play September 22nd at 7:30 p.m. and September 23rd at 7:30 p.m. So we are looking forward to seeing you there. And thank you for joining us on Embrace the Bold at the Valencia College radio station. It has been a joy to talk to you today.